When did you first warn the federal government here in Australia that there was a problem with the F-35, that it wasn't the aircraft that it was cracked up to be?
We started flagging our concerns as part and parcel of our input to the new air combat capability, because we were being asked. People were calling us and writing us, asking us what we thought of the various options. But it was really after the government had decided to join the SDD phase, or had been encouraged to decide to join the SDD phase of JSF in June 2002. I think our first formal approach was in 2003. And we pretty much laid it out in black and smudge, what we saw, based upon parametric analysis, because realising the aircraft hadn't been designed yet. But there was enough material around and there was enough indications around to give us cause for some serious concerns. So we did a fundamental risk analysis and laid it out in risk management or risk analysis, risk assessment terms.
What were the problems that you saw?
Well, firstly on the cost. We just could not believe people were believing the kinds of costs that were being bandied around, both in terms of the price for the aircraft itself, but also for what's called the operation support costs, the ongoing life cycle costs.
What kind of costs were you expecting the F-35 to be?
In 2003, we were saying that the F-35 was likely, particularly the F-35A, would likely cost more than $100 million a copy. This is 2003, but would likely exceed the cost of the F-22, or the price of the F-22. What we're also...
So how much would that be?
At that time we were projecting, because remember the F-22 back then they were going to build 350 or 370. So the unit price would have come down to around about 130, 140 million. Then, in fact, before I leave that, the other side of the coin was the operational support costs. We just couldn't believe that people could, in their wildest dreams, accept that an aircraft like the F-35, which weighs over twice that of an F-16, one of the aircraft it's supposed to replace, has over twice the fuel load, has a big, heavy, very hot-burning, thirsty engine, has several orders of magnitude of software load compared to the F-16, far more avionics, some leading-edge but not proven technologies in terms of the flight control systems and many of the other aircraft systems, and was also stealthy, was going to cost 20 to 50% less to operate and support. It just didn't make sense. And when we looked at it from a parametric analysis point of view, we were getting figures around the 1.5 times the cost of operating and supporting the F-16. Now this is in 2003.
So in dollar terms, how much did you think that the estimates were out in terms of how much it cost to run the F-35?
In terms of running it, 70% to 100%. So, I mean, people were claiming, in 2002, we had people down here from the Joint Project Office of the JSF program telling our people, the JSF would cost 20, maybe 50% less to operate and support than the F-16 Charlie and the F-16C, Block 50 F-16. And people were believing it. And that's when the term was coined, I think people are drinking Kool-Aid.
What does it mean by that?
Drinking the Kool-Aid is believing in a total indifference to what is real, or put it in plain speak, believing the bullshit, rather than actually looking at the data and the facts and testing the evidence.
So your evidence and your analysis showed that the F-35 was going to be a lot more expensive to run than in fact the promise was. The promise was it would be cheaper. You're saying it would be more expensive.
Yeah, in 2003 we were saying it's going to be at least 1.5 times more expensive to operate and support than the aircraft it was going to replace. And the recent report released by KPM...
And wasn't one of the reasons why they were replacing the old aircraft was because they were too expensive to run. This was the the argument was the F-35 would be much cheaper.
Yeah, the argument had been put together that the F-35 would be much cheaper to operate and support, and therefore they'd be able to save money. It's the old, let's say, save money trick based upon blue sky marketing.
And was that right?
No. Couldn't be. Physically could not be. Wasn't possible. And it doesn't matter how many aircraft, thousands of aircraft you build, the operational support costs are going to be dictated by the design. When one looked at the design of the JSF and looked at the way it was going, it was just not possible to achieve those sort of savings, to get the operational support costs down to the level that people were claiming.
Back in the early 2000s, 2002, Robert Hill, the then Defence Minister, said that the cost of each JSF would be approximately $40 million.
Oh, that's the advice he got from Defence. Yeah, we're talking $40 million a copy. Now, they didn't say whether it's Australian or US, and they didn't say what year dollars. They didn't describe the pedigree of the dollars.
What did you think of that?
Marketing, purely marketing. They're the kind of figures that the marketeers were presenting to our people in defence, but not only to our people.
When you say the marketeers, which marketeers?
Lockheed Martin marketeers. I mean, they were the winner-take-all contractor, and they put together a very well-orchestrated, slick, in fact, quite an outstanding marketing strategy. I mean, one of the things that we have done is actually looked at how this thing came to be. We've looked at the kind of forces and influences that have been used, particularly what sort of marketing strategy and business plan underpinned the JSF. And so we've looked at it in some detail. And if I was to show you the results of that, but before I ask you to take your honesty, your integrity, and your national interest out of your hip pocket and put it in the top drawer of your desk, I think you'd agree with us. It's a magnificent piece of work. It's masterful.
To sum up that strategy in a phrase or in a sentence?
Put simply, it's basically intended to position Lockheed Martin to have a monopoly position in the international fighter market for the next 30, 50 years.
And is it working?
Well, it certainly has got to the point where they're now using terms like too big to fail and there is no alternative. But I think a more apt description of the marketing strategy is one from a friend of mine in Norway, from the old Viking states, where he says that Lockheed Martin's marketing strategy is basically designed to enable Lockheed Martin to rape, plunder and pillage taxpayers around the Western world for the next 40 to 50 years. The way the aircraft's designed requires people to go back to Lockheed Martin, go back to the contractors if they want to do any changes. The way this program has been put together, it's all about having to deal with Lockheed Martin in relation to anything that happens with the JSF. Now that's a monopoly position. And the fact
so quite successful?
Well, no, because...
From Lockheed Martin's position?
Well, from their position has been successful, but not now, because the rubber's hitting the road. I mean, you can say all those sort of things when you're marketing and then when you're designing, when you're developing and even producing the aircraft, but you put the aircraft into test, into flight test, your ground test. That's when the rubber hits the road. And therein lies the problems.
So what's wrong with it?
Lockheed Martin and others refer to this aircraft as a truly fifth-generation fighter. However, it can't supercruise, it's limited in top-end speed, it can't climb, it can't run, and it can't go to the altitudes which the other fifth-generation fighters can. On top of that, it doesn't have the persistence in terms of fuel load, let alone weapons load, and it certainly doesn't have the agility of all the other fifth-generation fighter aircraft.
What's going to happen to the JSF?
Well, if one looks at the traditional way such programs are treated, I mean, firstly, the JSF, by every standard engineering and project management metric, is a failed project. It's just been kept alive on political life support. So it hasn't collapsed yet, but it's already failed. And you just have to look at it from a cost, schedule, capability point of view. Look at it from the mantra they used to market it. You know, they said affordability, lethality, survivability, supportability, and go through what has come out. Affordability, I mean, it's gone from $40 million now up to over $200 million copper. You know, supportability, it's gone from cheaper to support, 20 to 50% cheaper to operate and support in the F-16 to now over 2 times the cost. Lethality, well, just look at the weapons load it carries. It's got a very small weapons load. And survivability, combine that with the lethality, look at what's come out recently in terms of the manoeuvring performance of the aircraft air propulsive performance. Compare it to the competition.
You think it's had it?
Yeah. But what I hate to see happen is it go down the traditional path of either cancellation by the Pentagon or put on what's called the Congressional Budgetary Death Spiral.
What is that?
Well, basically, the Congress puts a cap on the budgets and keeps cutting the budgets back, and then you end up in this declining situation where they cut back the numbers of aircraft, and so the costs go up, and people start getting laid off, and the program just wallows.
And what happens in the end?
They produce, 300, 500 aircraft, and then it ends. In the meantime, other people are running off trying to find other solutions. And therein lies the problem with this program, because so many people have been encouraged to drink the Kool-Aid. In fact, some are taking it intravenously, to the point where things like this is too big to fail and there is no alternative start becoming the mantra, where in fact there are alternatives. And in fact, there's some very cost-effective and very smart alternatives, because the JSF's not all bad. I mean, there's been many good things done under the JSF program. There's been a lot of political capital spent, but also a lot of national treasure, and a whole bunch of countries, particularly the US. I mean, we here today are spending in Australia over $1 million a day on the JSF program. And the States, they were spending well in excess of $40 million a day on the JSF program. But there's good stuff being done. They've pulled together a great wherewithal to build an air combat capable aircraft. The only problem is they're building the wrong aircraft.